Let's talk Pakistani dramas. Next week, we're going to talk about Shireen Farhad in detail, which has replaced Qarz Jaan, and honestly, I've already fallen in love. But this week, we have to discuss the Qarz Jaan finale. By this point, it's been reviewed, discussed, and debated. So instead of doing that, I would just like to discuss what I wish I had seen instead. Qarz Jaan has been one of the more beautiful stories on Pakistani television in a while. And while the show was incredible and did not miss a beat throughout the majority of its run, post Amar and Nashwa's marriage, it was like the team just did not know how to proceed. Should have been focused on strong female characters moving beyond their past and taking control of their future. But this is not what happened. Nashwa, who has been our protagonist, got married and allowed that cycle of abuse to settle into her personality, which wasn't unrealistic. We understood that Nashwa, like her mother and her aunt, were victims of a harmful environment, and that leaves a psychological footprint. But there were several issues with how this character and this story proceeded. First, the moment Nashwa decided to take Amar to a psychiatrist, the audience unanimously said, "What? Amar was behind the assault of a young woman and potentially behind her murder, and now you're telling me Nashwa was envisioning a potentially stable future with this man?" After which he murdered his own brother-in-law in cold blood and then proudly displayed that act to his sister. This was not an innocent young man trapped in a life of toxicity. At some point, human beings are responsible for their own actions. Many serial killers and murderers come from a tragic past, but what you choose to do with your future is what defines your character. We've seen this in shows like Law and Order and Criminal Minds, and there's nothing wrong with humanizing a criminal and addressing the factors which brought them to their present state. But at this point, Amar's mental condition has been too far gone for him to suddenly have clarity and remorse. Sure, he could have felt sorry for what he did to his sister and even had a moment of confession, but that long-winded emotional outburst felt completely removed from his character. We can do better when it comes to writing psychological stories. I would have loved to see a stone-faced Amar confessing his crimes, acknowledging that he did something wrong, but also continuing to make excuses, even blaming Asad for making him angry. This would have been consistent with his character. Spending a few days in jail would not have created an entirely different personality and human being. It didn't make sense. Now, Amar confessed his crimes. This has no bearing on either lawyer because Amar chose to confess. But after Amar confesses, Nashwa goes on this entire tirade about his crimes. Behan, he confessed. Why are you still talking?
वो इस ताकत के नशे को एंजॉय करना शुरू करते हैं तो कोई भी गलत काम करते हुए नहीं थकते.
Then the judge jumps in and gives some kind of moral lecture, leaving us wondering why Nashwa and Judge Saiba are being masi musibat for no reason.
किसी अच्छाई और बुराई के दरमियान फर्क नहीं बताया.
It would have been great if Nashwa had actually fought this case well and berated him into this confession, but again, not what happened. Amar gets his moment after being sentenced to hug everyone, share emotional moments with everyone, and as he's leaving, he pauses in front of Nashwa and says,
"बहुत अच्छी वकील बन गई."
And Nashwa smiles, visibly proud. Proud of what? A criminal just called you a good lawyer, and it's not even a deserved title. He confessed. You had nothing to do with it. And then the final point, which really upset me.
मेरे लिए डाइवोर्स पेपर्स तैयार कर दे, मैं साइन कर दूंगा. मैं नहीं चाहता वो अपनी सारी जिंदगी विडो बन के मेरे नाम पे गुजार.
This should have been Nashwa's call. This should have been Nashwa's moment to take back control of her own life. This should have been Nashwa's moment to acknowledge that she deserves a good man like Burhan and not a man like Amar. But instead, Amar is turned into a hero from all corners. By the way, no one ever addressed who actually killed Mahin. This is not a slight against the performers. Namir Khan was excellent in these final two episodes. Deepak Parvani and Sakina Samo were amazing. Yumna Zaidi was amazing. Tazeen and Faisal Rahman were amazing. By the way, they were totally sidelined by the end. In the end, I still do believe Qarz Jaan will make it to my top 10 list of 2025. It was a beautiful show which really strived to tell a different story. But when a show is daring to tell this kind of story, be progressive. Take the leap. Make the statements you need to make. A criminal is a criminal. He does not deserve our sympathy. A woman is free to spend her life with whoever she wants to spend her life with. She should not be bound to a criminal who she was forced to marry. Let's start writing progressive stories. You were there. You did it. You just didn't complete the walk. What are your thoughts?